Like this. Hit it.
The Roger Report live morning show, weekdays at 9 a.m.
Say y'all, I was on Roger's panel a few times and I couldn't take it. The heat. I got out the kitchen. It was hot. I was sweating. I had to get out.
He's Roger, and he's right.
Check this out.
We can live or die. You choose. I have spoken to you a lot of times in hatred and anger, and you have not heard me. Well, you had better hear me today. If you won't listen to me when I make an appeal for the Negroes because you have no concern for the Negroes, listen to me when I make an appeal for America. You claim you love America. Well, we love America. But you are driving us back and you are making a Samson out of us, and we are going to pull down the pillars. And then you think we have no right to ask for something? Is it too much to ask you to grant us human dignity? Should we be put down and shot to death for this request? If so, you can aim your guns. What the hell do you think we care about dying if you're going to deny us the right to live?
Good morning, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Roger Report Live, the best show on social media. If you are new to the channel, go ahead and take a moment out to hit that like button, because this is where you're going to find the best content on social media, and you don't have to worry about it because you're going to have me right here to make sure that happens. And if you already been coming to the channel for a while, then go ahead, hit that like button, because you already know what time it is, and you know that this is where you're going to get the best content on social media. It's not a mystery to you at this point. You've seen other people do it, and you've seen other people do it well. But what you have not seen is anyone do it quite the way I do it. So make sure you hit that like button. And everyone, yes, everyone, take a moment out to share the content, y'all. Share the content. There are so many people who need to get great content like this. And it's just a small thing you can do to help the world be a better place. And isn't that what we want at the end of the day? Don't we want the world to be a better place? Of course we do. So share the content out. Share it through your social media. Share it through word of mouth, or even text someone's phone. But do what you got to do to help spread the word. All right, folks, today we are back. We're going to be dealing with a very, sensitive subject. This societal issue, okay, that really comes from Black women pushing very heavy right now. Not that the rest of society ain't pushing it with them and ain't trying to help them every way they can. But we're going to deal with why Black children don't deserve fathers, y'all. Okay, we're going to deal with why Black children don't deserve fathers, okay? Yeah, it's gonna be something, y'all. It's gonna be something. Okay. Well, before I go into this, let me first of all take a moment out to give credit where credit is due, because there are people who help this channel in a great way, and I cannot do things at the same level without them. I do appreciate everybody who decides and voluntarily becomes one of the financial contributors to this channel, because you all are very much needed. You all are very much needed. So shout out to Elder Blood. He is the sponsor of today's stream. Shout out to Elder Blood, the sponsor of today's stream. Appreciate you big time, my brother. Appreciate you big time. All right. And let me also give some shout outs to some of the first people to check in this morning. All right. It's always good that when you start a show that you're going to see a few people joining in as you get started. So shout out to y'all know how I go down at the Roger Report Live. there can only be one. And today, that one is my main man, the Saute Sheriff, who is in the building, y'all. The Highlander of today's streams, Mr. Shug to you. Shout out to you, brother. Shout out to you. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. Always great to see you here doing your thing. Shout out to the Righteous Teachers in the building. Great to see you, my friend. Great to see you. I see Tunnel Runner in the house. Great to have you here as well. We got Inspired Truth Broadcast in the building. Good to see you. Devon Townsend is in the house. Glad to see you, brother. Glad to see you, brother. Gyogami is in the building. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? J-Dub is in the house, the deputy on the grill. Glad to have you all. Glad to have you all, y'all. I want to deal with something, y'all, in a way that I don't know if it has been done with or dealt with before. Why black children don't deserve fathers? Because there is an actual sentiment going on in America that's being pushed real heavy by black women. And they're getting all types of support from other people and even the government. Okay, they're getting all types of support by other people, even the government. Shout out to you, J-Bay. Glad to see you here, brother. Glad to see you here. And y'all, it's one thing for a person to, come to a certain decision by themselves. There can be what some people would call some extreme circumstances to make a person make a decision like that. You can have a person who's married, they cheat on their husband, mess around, get pregnant, but they're going to keep the baby. And maybe they keep the baby for religious reasons or something like that. There could be extreme situations going on. Okay, not saying that that's an excuse. I'm just saying there are extreme situations that could be going on where people view these things as extreme. Then there could be situations where nothing about it is too much extreme at all. You got some woman who pretends she's faithful to some man and she's not faithful to him, and then she gets pregnant and she wants to pawn the baby off on another guy. Okay. Now the married woman would be pointing off on her husband, but the one who's not married, she'll just pawn it off on some guy that she happens to be in some relationship with. Now what did he ever do to her? Nothing. Nothing for real. But she wants to pawn it off too. Now then we also have women who mess around and they out there and they whole activities go crazy. They end up pregnant by a guy and don't really even know who the guy is. And sometimes they'll just pick a guy out of many that they slept with and say, hey, it's your baby. Things like this are done. Then you have women who actually have a baby with a man that they are in a relationship with. The man is notified that she's pregnant. He's there through the whole pregnancy. And once she has that baby, as soon as she believes that baby is old enough to kind of make it on its own a little bit, with the mother's help, they want out of that situation. All right? They want out of that situation. And I'm going to say something that I've noticed over the years. Black women do not like to be with the guy who they had a child with by the child's second birthday. Okay? If a black woman has a baby, and it's really going to pertain to like the first child they have, but the oldest born, when that baby hits that second birthday, the baby's dad is already out the picture. That's what black women like to construct. So at some point in time, we as a society, we should start to ask some questions, and we should start to pay attention to some things. And I'm gonna say, even though there has been some attention given to, quote unquote, women just having children out of wedlock for no apparent reason, people will call them single mothers a lot. These women are anti-family. These women are, in my opinion, I'm gonna say these women should very well be looked at. It's one thing when it's like a couple people over here, a couple people over there, this small group over here, and then this group over there. But looking inside of Black America, not that this don't happen in other places around the world, because it's, based on certain things being found out, looks like this stuff is going on in other places in the world. there are these sisters here who have these children, and for some reason, they don't even think it's normal to have a father raise his child, nor do they even want the father to raise his child. You know, when the CDC, once we got a hold of that study from the CDC that said Black fathers are basically the best fathers in America, the most active fathers in every single category. As far as a single father is concerned, we're the best ones. A man who's married to the woman who he has a child with, we seem to be the best ones. No matter what situation a guy's fathering in, Black men seem to be at the top of the list. So we obviously the best fathers America has to offer, which makes sense because behavior-wise, we're the best men America has to offer. So, that just kind of goes hand in hand. All right. Now, people do a lot of stuff to blame Black fathers for a lot of things. And when it was just a small contingent of women that men kind of knew about, I guess it was easy to let that slide. But y'all, I think we're at a point now that it should be well known enough that Black women don't like Black fathers raising their children. Now, the sad part is if you get a baby from a non-Black man, which I'm going to call them all white for the sake of argument. So if they're Hispanic, if they're Asian, if they're Indian, whatever the case is, they're all going to be considered white because Black women have the same reaction basically to non-Black men. All right. If they have a child by a Black man, they don't believe the father should raise the child. And it has nothing to do with who the father is. Because I know that's going to be the argument people want to make. It has literally nothing to do with who the father is. But if Black women have a baby by a non-Black man, they are totally good with the father raising the child because they want their perceived status from other women of being with a guy who is not Black and who has, quote unquote, accepted them. Whether he marries them or not is immaterial. They just want people to know, really other Black women to know, that a man who was not a Black man chose to marry her. Now, there's a small percentage of them that'll get that wish. And then the other ones just wanted to be known that this white man, for sake of argument, no matter what he actually is, as long as he's not a Black man, she may not get to marry the guy, but he will claim the child. And that's all they really want. They just want that child to be claimed. Why? Because she wants this perceived status of having white men who are interested enough to have sex with her. Because that is a true concern for Black women. It's sad to say it, but that is a huge concern for Black women. They want people to know that they have had sex with a man that is not Black. It's bragging to them. Crazy, but yes, it is bragging to them. Now, if they claim that baby, not only did they have sex with the guy and they got proof of sex, because they want people to know that it happened, they have this proof of sex with this non-Black guy, depending upon what the baby looked like. Because if the baby don't look like he was born of a non-Black guy, they going to be trying to take pictures or whatever. They're going to try to show you that it's from a non-Black man. They want the world to know. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. They want the world to know. So Black women are trying to make sure they can achieve having a baby without a Black father being involved. And I know some of you all on the slower side going to say, well, she's trying to protect her child from the child's father. Now, you say that because you're stupid, okay? Now, don't get mad. Don't get mad now. You got to keep in mind, stupidity is a choice. If you live in America, you do have a right to come up with stupid conclusions. Okay, you got a right to come up with stupid conclusions. Now, anyone who concludes that you have to protect the father or protect the child from the father, you're so stupid that you believe women should have babies by men that shouldn't be fathers. And you have to be good with that to come up with a statement as, well, she got to protect the child from the father. Why would you have a baby by a man that you have to protect the child from? That literally makes no sense. So the only reason you're going to have that reaction because you choose to be an idiot. Now, that's not my fault. I'm just the guy pointing it out. You the one chose that. Now, since we don't know who you are and you happen to be in the audience, you ain't got to voluntarily say that you that idiot. That's on you at the end of the day. You ain't got to let other people know you that stupid. But to say that the mother has to protect the child from the father, you ain't no getting around that unless you got to agree that you're an idiot. It's just really no getting around that at all. You got to be good with the fact that she would marry she would have a baby by someone who was a perceived threat to the child. Because what type of woman does something like that? Now, this is the thing, y'all. And I know it could have been viewed, it's going to be viewed very differently. Probably every 5 years ago, they'd probably be viewed a little bit different. 5 years ago, it'd be looked at a little bit different. Now we in 2025 right now. So in 2020 may seem a little different. Okay, 2015 could seem a little different than that. 2010 could seem a little bit different than that. You just keep going back, keep going back, keep going back as long as you want to go back. And things will probably seem a little bit different because it's getting worse. Okay, it's getting worse. And now the thing is, as men, I think we need to start asking some questions, y'all. And we're gonna have to start asking some very maybe what was they call them, gut-wrenching questions, stuff that just come out and grab you. What is wrong with Black women? Now, let's think about this. I mean, let's just think about it. It does deserve some thought. And since the children can't do this on their own, let's just think on the children's behalf. You a child born to a woman. The woman does not like the man that she got pregnant by. Now, this is the thing. She'll tell a story to try to justify why she got pregnant by said man. But she does live in America where you don't have to have a baby by any man you don't want to have a baby by. Now, I know some of y'all cringe at the thought. Some men will even cringe at the thought of a woman going to the chop shop and getting rid of that baby before that baby's born. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do know there's some men that cringe at it. But if we want to get realistic, a lot of women go to the chop shop and they do what they do. It just is what it is. So it doesn't make a difference how you feel about it. They go to the chop shop and they do what they do. You saw a lot of women, make a fuss when Donald Trump did his part to say, hey, the federal government shouldn't be making decisions about if women go into the chop shop or not. That should be left up to the states. And just the fact that he left it up to the state caused a little bit of a rumble. It did cause a little bit of a rumble. Okay. Now, at some point, Black men should ask themselves, why do so many Black women want to have a child by a man that shouldn't raise a child? Because they always are, well, I ain't gonna say always, but let's keep it real. A lot of women today throw out some theory, some accusation, some path of thinking, some story that would suggest that if the guy happens to be Black, we should question why he wants to be in his own child's life. Let's keep that real. They do things so to get people to question if the man should even be in the child's life. Now, my thing is this, y'all. In America, you only gonna have a baby by the man that you want to. What is going on with Black women that they like getting pregnant by men that they claim wouldn't be a good father? Yeah, I know folks like to equalize stuff, but men and women are very different. Okay, I put a link in the description where you had a woman say, suggest, what's wrong with a man if he raises a child for, a number of years and now he finds out the child is not his, she has a problem with him just walking away. And the thing is, a lot of women have made that same statement. You've seen social media, I'm sure, where you saw women saying the similar type of statement of, if you've been raising a kid all these years, why are you tripping now? As if you nor the child should actually get to make contact with their own family. Think about that. She don't want her child to know his own dad. Sometimes it's a boy, sometimes it's a girl. But they don't want the child to know who their dad is. What kind of way must you feel about your child if you don't want your child to know who his dad is? There's stories out there about guys who were trying to save their so-called son's life, doing what they could, was willing to give blood or bone marrow. They just doing what a dad would do. Well, if this is my son and my son needs medical help and my son can just use me, we ain't got to go look for no donors. I'm right here. Men have stepped up into many different circumstances to say, look, man, I'm right here. And unfortunately, there are men who are trying to save their son from something, and sometimes their life is literally on the line. And a man is told that he's not compatible with his own son. Now, I don't know how you ain't compatible with your own son. Sounds crazy to me. Okay? Sounds crazy to me that you can not be compatible with your own son. I guess in a super rare case, maybe this could happen because your son is part of you. Your son is who you are between you and your mother. And it ain't just sons. Daughters have found the same situation out. But the man was still willing to step up for his child. That's his daughter. He just gonna do what dads do. I gotta give up a little blood to save my kid. Hey, take it. Little bone marrow to save my kid. Take it. There's people who are, they'll give a kidney for their kid. Heck, I only need one. I got two. Who better to give my kidney to if it ain't my own kid? And unfortunately, some of these people, even when life was on the line, found out that you nowhere near a match. Matter of fact, you so far off, I don't think this your kid. Some ugly statements have had to be made. Now, of course, there's some doctors who tell people a little bit better than that. But basically, they've had to say this to men. Look, not only are you not a match, you so far off, I don't even think you're a relative. And that's crazy right there. You're going to try to save you're making the ultimate sacrifice if necessary. Because every time you have a surgery, you could die. But you cool with that because it's your kid. And what man ain't gonna die for their child? Okay? You don't find a whole bunch of black men who won't die for their own child. But the guy who's talking to him got to say, look, I know you want to help, and I get that this your kid, as far as what you know. But bro, I don't even think y'all related. Okay? I want to save this child's life. And it could be an adult person at this particular time. I want to save your child's life, but bro, I need an actual relative. Now I know you may have been with the child mama so long that you feel like that's a child of yours. I get it. I ain't disrespecting that. but I need an actual relative. Oh, what you talking about? No, I need an actual relative. Bro, that's my son. That was me and my wife's first child together. Bro, I need an actual relative. I guess you and your wife got some stuff y'all got to talk about, because I'm over here trying to make sure this person stays alive or this person can function like a regular person. So I need an actual relative, and that ain't you. And there's been some guys trying to save their so-called child and had to deal with the fact that this ain't even a relative. Crazy work. Okay, crazy work, as they say. Now, y'all, as we know, things like this happen from time to time. What does it mean when a thought process like that starts to spread amongst an entire group of women? Okay. What does it mean when a thought process like this starts to spread amongst an entire group of women? Because you can definitely say this thought process is definitely spreading amongst Black women. It's literally spreading around the entire group. Now, I'm not going to say every Black woman agrees with this. We're not at that point yet. All right? We're not at that point yet. But if we keep looking at the numbers, we sure seem to be headed that way. Where Black women think their child not only does their child not deserve to know who their dad is, that guys should just get over it. Okay? You should just get over it. I mean, look at what the woman was saying in the clip. All right? Why are you willing to walk away from a kid that you've been raising for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever she said? You know? Because in her mind, as long as I get what I want, does it make a difference if a child should get what they need? Now, I'm starting to realize there's a level of selfishness there that most Black men ain't even considered yet. Okay? There's a level of selfishness there. Even though we've heard about these type of stories, there's a level of selfishness there that Black men ain't even considered yet. Because we rarely consider, what's going on from a child's perspective and the woman's perspective, not on just getting her way. Because that's what it'd be about. She just wants her way. Not about the fact that the child never has a relationship with their actual dad. And unfortunately, there's been some men and some women who grew up, eventually found out the truth, and before they can make contact with their actual father, the father's done died. Sad situation. You want to make contact with your dad, and he already did. What is the mental state of Black women if they don't want their oldest child to know who their father is? And I'm going to say oldest because when it comes to other kids that are younger, sometimes they belong to the guy she messing with at that point in time. Sometimes they don't. I don't know exactly what it would be. I guess that's about a 50-50 chance. 50-50 chance that your second, third, or fourth kid might actually be yours, or it might belong to somebody else. Because there's definitely been some situations where the oldest child was a lie when it came to who the father was, and then the other kids belonged to the man. But then there have definitely been some cases where multiple children were had by a woman, and they belonged to a different man. or different men. And we try to be logical about it and, oh, well, the other guy must have had more money. That's not always the case. Okay, that's not always the case. I'm not even sure if it's the case most of the time. Because based on information I've looked at, I wouldn't suspect that it's the case even most of the time. All right. I think there's some ways we really need to think about this. Now, I have stated as a black man, every single one of us should take our children and get a DNA test. Point blank period. That just needs to be a new policy we pick up. Now, you might have kids already, and you ain't gonna necessarily test them, but from this day forward, any child a black man has, we have a responsibility. I'm saying community-wise, y'all, we have a responsibility to go have our children checked to make sure that they belong to us. We got a responsibility to do that. That's a community responsibility. It is good for the black community to know that children belong to the father. Now, the thing is, what community do you belong to? Because there is a dysfunctional single mother group out there who does not believe in family, who does not believe children should necessarily know who their fathers are. That group just wants to get stuff out of other people. But then there's also a group of men who are respectable, productive, functional men who believe in black men's leadership. And our group needs to know if that kid that you walking around is yours. Now, I'm not like other men. A lot of men, we start attacking other men because a lot of us, we're too ladylike in certain ways. I'm gonna say we're too ladylike. And I'm using that term very loosely, but we act like our mama sometimes. It is a man's decision whether he wants to raise somebody else's child or not. That's on him. If he's comfortable enough to do that, knock yourself out. If you're not comfortable enough to do that, don't worry about it. The thing is, he should know exactly what he's doing. You shouldn't be raising somebody else's child and not knowing that you're raising somebody else's child. Now, if you make that decision as a man that you're going to take care of that baby as your own, that's fine. See, I'm not going to hate on a man who is going to do what he wants to do because that's what he wants to do. He may have a religious reason. Sometimes it'd be a guy who's sterile and he can't have kids of his own. There's different reasons why a guy would raise another man's child. But see, for me to respect men, I have to accept his reasoning. Okay, if he's a respectable, productive, functional black man that believes in black men's leadership, and he comes to the conclusion that the best course for him to do is raise another man's child, I can't really fault him like that. I wouldn't necessarily do it. But what if I meet some woman who I really like that? And I'd be like, well, yeah, I'll take on her and her kid. See, it's my choice at the end of the day. And because it's my choice, I got to respect that it's his choice. Now, the thing is, be careful if that's the road you want to go down. And make sure that that's the road you actually want to go down. And make sure you're going down that road for the right reasons. So as a black man, if you in 2025 and you think you are part of the respectable, productive, functional black men-led community, then you got to take your child to get tested. Okay? And you do this before you sign the birth certificate. And you tell women up front through the door, this is just our new policy. We're not asking her to like the new policy. We're just informing her there'll be a new policy that's happening. We're not asking her to like it. We're just going to get the policy done. Because as soon as I find out that child is mine for sure, I can sign that birth certificate and we can get on back to business. But now, if you are a person who, say, don't want to sign it, if a woman says She has a problem with a man who ain't gonna sign it. I mean, she has a right to have a problem with that. Let's keep that real. She has a right to have a problem with that. But now you got to ask yourself, well, why is this a big issue? But that's why I say you should tell women through the door. Don't make this no secret. Don't make it something that she got to deal with, quote unquote, under duress or under pressure. No, you just tell her through the door. Yeah, I got to get a DNA test before I could, confirm that's my baby. And that comes with the territory of dating a black man. And as black men, I'm gonna tell you, y'all gonna have to get comfortable being in charge and laying down some laws. You're a man. Be comfortable laying down some laws. It's your job. Okay? It's literally what you were born to do. All right? You're supposed to be a leader, right? The women keep saying you're a leader, right? So lead. By leading, not government approved. And I'm gonna say, y'all, I'm very much against trying to get the government to push paternity tests. I'm very much against that. Because if you give the government that much power, they'll just start telling you who your kids are. And what you gonna do about it if you done beg the government to take that into their hands? You should be looking for less government control, not more government control. So if you done told them, we want y'all to figure out who our babies are. We don't want to look our woman in the face and we don't want to see her cry and we want to be so upset that even though I'm hitting everything else, she don't necessarily know about it, or maybe she's suspecting it, but I ain't never did it right in front of her. I want to take her for granted. Well, see, my thing is, you want to take her for granted, that's on you as a man. But then you shouldn't trip if if you're gonna take it for granted that she's doing the right thing. I mean, that's cool and all, but should be some trust and verify. And why take on a bill for at least 18 years if that's somebody else's bill to pay? 18 years is a long way to go to pay somebody else's bill. And if you go too long, let's keep it real. You can figure out that this ain't your kid, but you're going to be looking for that baby to develop certain things. You may not really know that until that child is, 3 or 4. That's quite rough, if you ask me. All right, that's quite rough. Now, the thing is, do we consider why the black women just don't want dads to be around? And we start talking about, a lot of folks be trying to push mental health, right? Are black women still collectively sane? If they don't want their first child to belong, to be raised by his own dad or her own dad, we don't know. She knows who the father is. Sometimes even the fathers don't know. Sometimes she's so dirty she won't even tell the other guy that she's pregnant by his baby. Which is, I mean, she's a piece of work. If she's doing that, sometimes, she get pregnant by a man and she'll go back and tell him, I'm pregnant with your baby. Or she won't even tell him that he got her pregnant. And he done lived this whole life and now some baby from 36 years ago, well, technically as an adult at that point, somebody from 36 years ago come in their world talking about, yeah, man, I had you, you had me with Linda. Remember Linda? And you sit there trying to figure out who Linda is. You ain't got no clue who Linda is. Don't even remember no Linda. Yeah, you had me with Linda. It could get real aggressive too. Because you don't walk into some man's world, not just his house or whatever. You don't walk into his world talking about, yeah, me and, Linda's my mama. And you used to mess with her. That's going to come out well. It's, when do we start asking about, mental health question when it comes to women? Because I'm saying this, y'all, this desire to have so much control over a situation that she doesn't want at least that first child to be raised by their own dad. Because there are some of them who think if they can just get the first child to come out of somebody else's loins rather than the husband's, okay, or the long-term boyfriend or the fiance or whatever the case is, she wants another man to either be involved and do something with that baby, or she wants you to do it and unknowingly know that, well, to do it without knowing that that's not your kid. So the money that you invest in the child that you could have invested somewhere else, keep in mind, she didn't want you to make other investments. She wanted you to invest in some child that didn't belong to you. Now, I'm not saying women can't have a desire for men to want to be a blessing to their child, but why not let the man know that if that's what you want? And just because you was with your husband at the time and wasn't nobody else to consider, you know, that don't mean a particular guy can't take care of his own kid. I mean, this is crazy stuff. But, women like to talk about men from a mental health standpoint, and they say that men don't have emotional intelligence. Well, can you be emotionally intelligent and want your child to not have a relationship with their own dad? Does that sound like an emotionally intelligent thing to say? If you're willing to have a baby and hide the fact from your significant other that that baby is from another man and not you too, I mean, that's crazy. Now, I'm not saying women don't go through stuff. I ain't gonna say that, y'all. I'm not gonna say women don't go through stuff. I'm not gonna say women don't get upset from time to time. I'm not gonna say women don't have stresses of being a mother and things like that. Those things can happen. But are they a legitimate reason to want to have a child by a man that they don't believe should raise a child? Now, this is the thing, y'all. We got to accept what the reality is. If a woman is hiding the fact that the baby belongs to some other man other than the supposed father, that means she don't want that child to be raised by her own dad. Okay? If she doesn't let the man know what's going on, she don't think that child deserves to know. Now, I could understand certain stuff that, like I said, to be somewhat extreme. A married woman doing this, yeah, much more of an extreme case. Not saying she should be doing it either. I could understand a married woman doing it to a certain degree because she's trying to hide her deceit from her husband. And she doesn't want to deal with that clash that may come with her husband. But it don't stop at married women. See, it'd be one thing if only a small fraction of married women were doing it. That would be one thing. But you have women who are not married doing the same thing. They haven't even made the vow to the man, but they're choosing to sleep with somebody else and get pregnant. And then they tell the guy, no, that's your baby. It don't sound right to me, y'all. It don't sound right to me. Should women still be considered totally sane and totally fine while also desiring to keep a child from his father? Now, I understand you may not like the guy. I get that. Women have, a lot of sex with a lot of random guys very, very rapidly. I can understand you don't like the child's father. But that's between y'all. What's going on when it ain't between y'all and it's between, y'all, and medical stuff. I'll just say that medical procedures. You know, do sane women? Yeah, I mean, let's just ask this question, y'all. Do sane women want their fathers, the fathers of their children, to have a relationship with their children? Let's just put it like that. Do sane women want the fathers of their children to have a relationship with their children? Is this sanity? Think about that, y'all. Is it sanity? Should women be cool with children growing up not knowing who the child's father is? Should they be cool with that? Is that a sane thing to do? Or is mom a little bit off? You know, what's the mental state of these people? Okay. What's the mental state of a mother who has a child, but you want to fool everybody into thinking that this child doesn't belong to the man that it belongs to? I mean, this is an action a lot of black women take when they have children, especially amongst the oldest child. It's crazy enough that they're still doing it to some younger children. You know, that's crazy work in itself, but especially those oldest kids. We are now living in a time where if you are the oldest child, you may need to check yourself for medical reasons or something like that. I don't know what it'd be like to have to deal with that, but I will say this. Now, you may not want to check your own child if your child is at a certain age, which I can understand. But I think a lot of black men may want to check to see if their quote unquote dad is their actual dad, especially if you're the oldest one. Okay. Now, if you look just like your father, yeah, you're a little bit safer. You're a little bit safer. But if you don't look like you fell out your father's hip, you definitely may want to check, not to embarrass the guy that you believe is your father, not to embarrass the guy who raised you. No, not for that. But for medical purpose, and so you can be sure in your own mind what's going on with you. You know, think about that. Should you as an adult go get yourself tested? If your dad is still alive, should you go get yourself tested so you could be sure that that's your actual dad? And if you find out that it's not your actual dad, hopefully you got time to find out who he is. Now, I understand that may be rocking some boats because that's real personal. You know, so you got to make that decision for yourself. Should you quote unquote upset the apple cart and get a test done between you and your dad? You know, and that's some information you may need one day. You got to decide how important it is. And I know that's a tough decision to have to make. It's crazy that what black men got to deal with sometimes. But it could save you a lot if you know now. Okay. I'm just saying, y'all. It may save us a lot of grief if we all get tested now. You know what? And now that idea popped in my head, I do think if a lot of men would actually go get tested to see if their father is their actual father, we may really help our sons and help give them some courage. Because in mass, we need to start having our children tested. That needs to happen in mass. If you're a black man and you have a child, the woman that you are with should know beyond a shadow of a doubt that once your child's test results come back, that's when you'll sign the birth certificate and not beforehand. And she needs to be in support of you signing the birth certificate. Because if she's not in support of it, what is tomorrow going to mean? You may have years and years and years in front of you to do something about this kid. Okay, you should want your son, let's say you got a son. You should want your son to get his kid tested. Okay? You want to make sure they're your grandkids. You're going to be the one babysitting for free, right? Ain't that what grandparents do sometimes? Stuff going on. We're going to drop the kids off at your house. We're going to be back in 3 hours. Don't you want to know them your grandbabies? Okay? And y'all, we can be the example of change. As I've said many times before, that a lot of stuff I talk about, it ain't gonna necessarily rescue us, but it could help rescue a lot of folks in the future. So if you ain't the spitting image of your father, and I know this is bold to say, but why don't you consider getting the test between you and your father done? Okay? Why don't you consider it? Now, the thing is, yes, you may get some results you don't like. That could very well happen. Or, you could not get anything done, and your son, who looks at you as an example of what he should or shouldn't do, even if it's only half the time, maybe he decides I should let some woman get over on me with a kid because I don't really want to see. I don't really want to know. Now that baby don't look like me too much, but I don't really want to know. And that may happen to him just once. Now it may happen to him 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. You don't control what a woman's gonna do. But what type of mindset would your son have if he knew that his father was a grown man and went to his granddad and said, "Hey, granddad, from his perspective, I'm your son. I think we should get tested and just to make sure that we're connected from a DNA perspective." Now I'm thinking, is there going to be a father who's going to say no to this? Yeah. Is there going to be somebody who's going to say no to this idea? Is there an older guy? Is he going to really trip and say, let's not do this? Because even if you're an older guy, you 70 years old, think about it. Your son is coming to you. Your son could be 50, 45, whatever the case is. Now, maybe he already knows something. He just come out and tell you what the story is. That could happen. Okay? That could happen. Okay? That could happen. But that's his choice at the end of the day. If he chose to raise you as his own, that's on him. That was a man's decision. And I do think we got to be careful about criticizing other men about how they're going to live their life under certain terms. If it's not going to hurt the community, it's not that terrible of a thing. Now, I do think as if we want an actual community that's working well, we have to accept some things. Now, my thing is, I just want you to know, if you decide to raise some other man's child, that's on you at the end of the day. It's your money, it's what you're going to give out in inheritance and all that type of stuff is going to affect your other children if you got some. All that's on you at the end of the day. And I'm not going to act like I'm all that worried about what you're going to do from a financial standpoint for your children. I'm not going to even pretend I am. I do think, though, at some point in time, black men gonna have to make some bold statements about what's going on. Okay. Shout out to Wise Skin Man Cave. He said, I don't want no bastard grandbabies. Well, I mean, that can happen to the best of us, Wise Skin Man Cave, because the bastard grandbaby just means your grandbaby was born out of wedlock. But if you gonna be babysitting your grandbabies, wouldn't you feel a little bit better if it was confirmed that they were your grandbabies and not somebody else's grandbabies? Because, I mean, grandparents do a lot. Let's keep it real, y'all. Grandparents need to get their props sometime too. Because the fact that they would babysit kids at the drop of a hat in a lot of cases, that's a good thing that you can, something important came up, you just run by your parents' house and drop the kids off. That's a great luxury for the people who have that as a luxury, where you live close enough to your grandparents, where the children's grandparents, you could just drop them off at your kid's house, or excuse me, you could just drop them off at your parents' house, or it could be your wife's parents' house. If you're not married, you drop them off at your parents' house, or it could be your child's mother's parents' house. That's a good luxury to have in a world where you got to rip and run and do all kinds of stuff. So that's a great luxury to have. We may end up having some rough conversations because it may be some people where neither one of them knew. Okay, y'all. This might lead to a situation where neither one of them knew it. You go talk to your dad. Dad don't know you ain't his kid, and you don't know you ain't dad's kid. It could lead to some tough situations. But y'all are grown at this particular point, so I'm pretty sure y'all would look at the thing very differently, because y'all are grown, been grown for years, been grown for some decades. I'm pretty sure y'all will be able to handle certain things a little bit better than the kid would anyway. But it would constitute the fact that, the general thing about black men is we go get our children tested. So I think it would be good. And I'm saying this too, because if we have sons, y'all, wouldn't it be good to say, yeah, me and my dad, we got tested. We know we way back, we got our results, and we know we good. All I'm telling you to do is just do what me and your dad did. Y'all see how much better that sounds? Look, son, I ain't telling you to break up with the woman. I'm not telling you I'm suspecting her anything. All I'm saying is just do what me and your dad did. Ooh, that sounds a whole lot better, don't it, y'all? Just do what me and your dad did. It could be the best day of y'all life. Could be. Or at least be up there. Maybe your wedding day a little bit better. Maybe your children being born a little bit better. I don't know, but I think it could be high up there for a lot of folks. But it's not just about us. Now, if you're an older guy and you have a son yourself that's an adult, if your son is an adult, I'm saying this, if your son is an adult, at least go have a conversation with your son about it. Not because you necessarily need to do it. It's about starting this example for black men where it becomes normalized for us to go get our children tested. We don't need the government to tell us who our kids are. We can do that on our own. And when a man goes to his girlfriend, fiance, or wife, and he say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, when we have some kids, I want to get the kids tested. Heck, some of y'all may be bold enough to say, I kid 5, but I still want to get the kid tested. It just comes across a lot better when you say, yeah, me and my dad did it. Me and my dad, last week we went and got our tests done, and we just waiting on the results or whatever the case is. Or you may want to do it after the results come. I just say, look, baby, me and my dad, we went out and did some stuff. So, now what I want to do is do this with my sons as well. Well, what you mean? Well, yeah, me and my dad, we had a paternity test just to make sure that I'm belong to him. Dad getting up there in years. We just want to be prepared for all kinds of things. So now I'm going to take my children and me and my children going to do the same thing because, you did it with dad. Now, this could start a movement, y'all. Think about it. This could start a movement. Shout out to Trash Bandit who said my grandparents were my parents. Okay, well, who your mom is, and that all depends on what that situation is like. Because when somebody say my grandparents were my parents, it's a very good chance that they mean their maternal grandparents, which means the father side is already cut off. A lot of folks ain't necessarily holding a relationship with the father side unless the father is still alive. But I do think there's certain things that need to be done and certain examples that we need to set forth. And we do need to show black women we ain't scared of them no more, y'all. I done said it plenty of times before that my honest opinion is black men have been socialized to be afraid of black women. We're just afraid of them. And I think that socialization will make us afraid of just about any woman. If you have been trained to be scared of black women, it makes sense for you to be scared of some other kind of woman too. So I think black men are going to have certain little battles with that. And I think one of the best things that help us get past those things or build up some courage, however y'all want to see it, you and your dad go get tested, y'all. You got folks listening to me. Some of y'all in y'all 30s, some of y'all in y'all 40s, some of y'all in y'all 50s. If your dad is still around, he's a much older man. Y'all can handle what the results are, I'm sure. Okay? Y'all can handle what the results are. Shout out to James Bennett. He said, afraid in what sense? I mean, you're afraid of them. You're afraid to question them. You're afraid of them as an authority figure. Let's be realistic, y'all. If we're not willing to get our own children tested, why would we be afraid to do that? Is there anything besides fear that will make you get your child, that will stop you from going to get your test done? Especially a test done with your father, not even your kids. If you say, hey, dad, let's go get our test done before you do it with the kids, what would stop you from doing that if it's not fear? Because, I mean, there's different things out there. So is there anything else that we can suggest that would stop you if it's not fear? Now, if you was talking about some medical condition where y'all couldn't make the trip, that would be different. That's just too far gone. All right. Now, I can even see an older man who don't think he got that many years left. He may not care. He'd be like, man, it don't make no difference. It's over with now. You mad now. If that's the attitude he take, hey, I understand. He may be on some, let's not rock the boat now. Let's not rock the boat now. We already, man, I'm 75 years old. I ain't finna rock the boat now. It don't matter at this point. Now, if he take that attitude, yeah, I get it. But if we suggest to our dad that we're going to get a DNA test done, now, more than likely, being realistic, y'all, you're going to have to pay for it yourself. Okay. But they shouldn't cost, millions of dollars. So you get your DNA test done. You find out if granddad is truly dear old granddad. Hopefully he will be. But if everybody went and done it, of course, in some cases, he wouldn't be. I'm not saying you got to start treating people differently. I just think if a man did it and he's older, especially if he does it with especially if he does it with his father. I think that's going to build a lot of courage up, y'all. And I think that can help to start a trend. May not trend right away, but I think it can help get things moving in the right direction. Now, shout out to Mr. Suge to you. I see the message about the link. I'm gonna go see what the link is and put it in the chat. Yeah, because we were having some trouble with that last week. Yeah, I did give Chef Mike. I did remember to do that. I gave Chef Mike his wrench. Mr. Suge, to you after the show, I'm gonna make sure I give you your wrench. So y'all, I'm gonna get some wrenches out, as I can get them out, when it makes sense. So I got Chef Mike's wrench. I got Chef Mike to get his wrench. Mr. Suge, to you, I make sure I do yours after the show. Okay, I'll make sure I do yours after the show. All right. So hopefully this will be the last day you go without yours, and I get some others in, as well as we rebuilding this thing, y'all. We rebuilding this thing, okay? But let me go see what that link is, and so I can put it in the chat for y'all in case somebody do want to come up, because it would be good to get some thoughts. And there goes Chef Mike with his wrench right there. Okay, so I got his in. Other folks will be dropping somewhat soon. Mr. Suge, to you, I get you after the show today. I definitely get you after the show today. Now, y'all, the thing is, we're men. We got to do some things that's considered a little bit scary sometimes. We got to be examples for our children. If we want the best for our sons, then we should set an example of what they can do. Because a lot of sons will listen to their fathers, and they will do things behind what their fathers do. It's not going to be all the time, but when you give somebody an idea and they say, yeah, well, my father did that, that weighs a lot with people. That weighs a whole lot with people. Now, I told y'all when I was younger, I wasn't about to go to the military because I was on the view I had of the military in America back then, that just wasn't going to work. Now, had my father told me to go to the military, or my father suggested that this would be my best option, realistically, I would have went because my dad said it. A lot of folks can have influence, but it's hard to get that same type of influence that you get from a father. When a father suggests something to you, it carries a different kind of weight. Okay, it carries a different kind of weight. When you have a relationship and somebody just ain't a quote unquote father to you, because the way we use that term, we mean it a certain way when we say a father. And a lot of times folks just mean it from a biological perspective. But when your dad tells you something, I'm gonna say that when your dad tells you something, it can mean something totally different to you. And even though that ain't the way you wouldn't have went on your own, just the fact that dad said it, it means a great deal more. Okay, it means a great deal more. Yeah, shout out to Landry. He said the white man's military. Well, I ain't gonna say that's the term I was thinking in back then, but it's a lot closer to what I would say now. You know what I'm saying? Back then, it was much closer to that than what I would say right now. You know what I'm saying? Now, I have said before, if I were to go back in time and do anything different, I probably would have went to the military because I understand, so much more about it and how it makes sense and things like that. But yeah, back then, no, I wasn't going. But realistically, if my father would have sat down with me and said, you know what, son, going to the military is a good thing, and I think you should go for X, Y, and Z, I just would have went because he said so. Didn't nobody else even have it like that with me. But if my dad would have said it, that would have changed everything. That's what I honestly believe. And my dad said it, a whole lot of stuff. I don't even think my father even knows just how much influence he has on me. When he says something, it always make a world of difference. And that's just real talk. Okay, that's just real talk. Now maybe he didn't want me to go. All right, so I can consider that too. He may have been thinking about it because I know my father, uncles, they have had to deal with wars actually happening while they were in the military. They had to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So perspectives can be different. Some of them had to go. Others did not. I don't think all of them had to go. Nah, I probably have to check on that one. because between my father and my uncles, all of them might have seen combat. All of them might have seen combat. I like to say somebody didn't see combat. Maybe one or two of them didn't have to see combat. But the uncles that I have, most of them have seen combat. I'll say that at least. Most of them have seen combat. So, their perspectives could have been a little bit different there. And if my father would have told me to go to the military, I would have went. Just realistically. Probably would have got through somewhat unscathed too, and when I would have went, I probably wouldn't have had to face too much combat. I probably would have went in at a great time. But it is what it is. But y'all, to have this thing where it's normal for women who are Black in America to not want at least that firstborn child to be connected to his father. At some point in time, I think we need, I don't like to say anything is really a mental issue, but I think collectively there has to be something going on from a mental perspective where Black women think at least that first child should not know who their father is. Now, the rest of them, like sometimes they'll have the other kids go, once they get the guy they want to agree to raise some kids, then okay, well, I had some babies by him now. And again, that don't happen all the time. Sometimes men look at their family, and unfortunately, they found that every child that he supposedly had with his woman, whether it was a wife or not, belonged to somebody else. This is happening with 2, 3, even 4, 5 kids. Which got to be a devastating blow, because that suggests that wife was never faithful. Okay, when you got 2, 3, 4 different kids by other men besides your husband, that does suggest that wife ain't never been faithful, and truth be told, ain't never gonna be faithful. That's just a real messed up situation right there. Now, how do you make things better, y'all? You got to do something different. So we got all these mothers out here, they got all these babies, and a lot of folks ain't gonna find out that this ain't really your son until somebody is at the hospital. Now, I'm not gonna say that's the worst place to find out that this ain't your son, but it shouldn't take a medical emergency to find out either. I will suggest that. It probably shouldn't take a medical emergency to find out that this is not your son. It's got to be heart-wrenching for men to get somewhere and want to save somebody, and then the doctor has to tell you, we need an actual relative. And you sitting there like, well, I'm his dad. What you talking about? You need a relative. Especially if they say it in a way where, they just assume you already know that ain't your kid. If they just said it in that way, but they just assume that you already knew that wasn't your kid. Yeah, child's in a little bit of trouble. We can probably get this taken care of, but we're gonna need a donor. Okay, we probably gonna need a donor, and everything would be, I'm pretty sure it get pretty, if we get a donor, get some blood, it'll get pretty routine after that. We just got to get, matching blood. So, if we could use a relative, that'd be great. And then the, father steps up to the plate and they just do their due diligence and find out father's not a match. And they come back, hey, look, man, we get it. Sometimes you've been in a child's life for so long, you think of them as your own, but we need an actual relative. And just say it in a nonchalant way, and that man's soul being crushed to a certain degree. What you mean this ain't my kid? Look, sir, we went through our process because we wanted to get this surgery done. But it just turns out that you and your supposed son, y'all just so far apart, we can't use your blood. We need an actual relative. Now, that's got to sting. Now, a guy can say it in a nice, polite way, but it's going to sting. That's definitely going to sting. It ain't nothing against you, man. It ain't personal. We just need an actual relative for us to do what we need to do so everything will stay safe. I mean, we appreciate the fact that you were willing to, but we need a relative. That's got to crush some man's, every time that's said, like a little piece of the spirit is getting crushed on, I would have to assume. You know, he'll recover, but that ain't cool. You know, landing in the little out there, he say, I see. So you have chosen death. Well, we don't want to wish nothing bad on the kid if the kid is in that situation. We don't want to wish nothing bad on the kid if the kid is in that situation. And it could go the other way around, because what if your father, so your supposed father, needs a little something for him to be all right? He up in age. Okay, I said 75 earlier. Let's go with that. Let's say he's 75. He could use a little something for some help. Maybe just need a little bit of blood, and you as a son try to be a good son. Say, look, man, I'm a pretty healthy dude. He can have some of mine. We can just get right past this. Yo. And the sad part is a lot of women gonna let y'all go through the whole situation, and she already know better. Okay. She already know better, but let's pay attention to how women get out. She gonna let you go through the whole situation to give, maybe you got to give up a pint of blood or whatever. I don't know how much they take from you, but let's say they get a pint and everything should be straight. After they get this blood, everything should be pretty routine. After that, it should get to be real simple. It's gonna be easy. She'll let you go through the whole process and just hoping and praying that you're gonna somehow match up. Because if you match up, she'll never tell. But now you as the son find out, well, I hate to tell you, bro, but you're not his kid. You're not a match. What you mean I'm not a match? I'm his son. No, I get that, but there's extremely rare cases, because I'm assuming there's got to be extremely rare cases where a son wouldn't necessarily match a father. It's probably extremely, extremely rare, but it might happen, and now, as a son, you may not be trying to hear all that. Look, man, there's some rare cases out there where your son just ain't gonna match up. I mean, but then more than likely you're gonna hear, yeah, y'all so far apart, I'm pretty sure y'all not relatives, bruh. Okay, I'm pretty sure y'all not even relatives. Okay. You wasn't just a little off, bro. You ain't nowhere near the table. Okay, you ain't nowhere near the target, man. We thought you'd be a bullseye since you his son, but bro, you ain't even get on the paper, man. You wasn't nowhere near the bullseye. Nowhere near. That's got to be rough. Because now that's your perceived father, whose situation is a whole lot rougher than what it need to be, because you just didn't have the grace and understanding to know that that kid didn't belong to you. It's got to be rough, even for a son. It's got to be rough. But y'all, now we just at a point in our society where, it seems like the average Black woman doesn't want her, at least that firstborn child, to be raised by the child's actual father. I think mental stability with the women needs to be considered at some point. I'm not saying that they crazy where they get an excuse. I'm not saying that. But if women are continuing to gravitate towards situations where they believe they can fool a man about raising kids, I mean, it just don't sound right to me. It don't sound right to me. Why would you even think you can get away with this stuff? Well, there's so many other women that got away with it. A lot of them gonna feel confident. And let's keep it real. I think the women know far more than what they let on that they know. Because I think there's a lot of women who know that, yeah, this child don't belong to Davion. This Dion kid. And she might tell her girlfriends about it, and they just kind of keep it a secret from the men. You had the little boy named Davion Jr. Okay. Dion kid the whole time. She knows Dion kid, but the kid named Davion Jr. Yeah. And I would say this. Why do I think they may possibly be talking to each other? Well, they ain't gonna never question the names that a woman uses during the trip. They just gonna roll with them. Man, this is a crazy world, y'all. That's all I can say. This is a crazy world. I think unfortunately we're gonna have to do a little bit more than what we've been doing. And I know I've said multiple times, because I ain't gonna never agree with the government doing all the DNA testing and saying that this is your kid. I don't trust the American government like that. That's a little too much. I think the risk is just a little bit too high for that. I know there's a lot of men fighting for paternity tests being automatic. I get it, why a lot of men are going to fight that fight. But to me, it's just easier to deal with one woman than the whole system. Why you just don't take your kid out and get your kid tested? And I think before we do that, something that can happen a whole lot that'll make everyone feel much safer about these situations. If you are a son and you can afford to, I'll put it like this. If you're a son and you can afford to, because anybody of any age might watch this. Now, I make my content for 18 and over, but anybody of any age might hear what I'm saying. So if you are a son and you can afford it, why not just get it done on yourself? Pay for you and your dad, and for it to go beyond you, I think it gets a little bit easier. If your 23-year-old knows that you're 45, okay, think about that, y'all. You had a kid around 22. So now your 23-year-old watches his 45-year-old dad talk to his 75-year-old dad, 30 years different between them. And they decide they're going to go get tested, and they're going to come home and show their results, good or bad. I think a lot of situations, it'll still come out good. As we're younger, it might be a little bit rougher for it to come out good. But older, I think a good percentage of those guys are going to already know. I've already said something. But we got to help these folks build up some resiliency, y'all. Now, if you the father and you got it like that and you got a lot more money than your son, go on pay for the test, man. Don't be cheap with your son. Go on pay for the test if you got it like that. Now, if you a son and you really can't afford it, just go on pay for it. Okay, y'all ain't necessarily got to split it. Y'all father, son. So just go on pay for the test. Just get it over with and out the way. Bring your results home. Share them as a family. Make it a new tradition of your family. There will be women questioning this stuff. So can you do it for your son, y'all? There will be women questioning these things. That's going to happen. Okay. Can you handle it when the women start questioning, why are y'all doing this? And why y'all, quote unquote, making a big deal out of this? That's going to happen. But if we want a better future, I think we should just let it happen. Okay. We should just let it happen. We'll be all right. Okay, we'll be all right. Now, I got a guest coming up, so oh, Lord have mercy. I'm going to let him have the mic. I just noticed his picture, y'all. I just noticed the picture he happened to use today. Now, I can't... Okay, I can see it now. Okay, y'all. I'm going to introduce... It's a three-way, and he was the nigga that stayed to the panel. You have the floor, my brother.
Salute to you, Roger. Shout out to the chat. We all know who these two people are, and and we know why his father's not in the picture because we don't have DNA tests. So, but again, hey, and this is real world stuff, right? It was a 3-way, and he was just a dude that stayed. And and back then in the 80s, you just believe stuff. Okay, my dad is like 5 foot, I'm 6'6", but hey, we don't really pay attention in biology class in high school, right? So, but at the end of the day, I mean that's a lot of what happens in Black America, right? They don't know, right? They just don't know. And I'm not even taking shots at this. I'm not even taking shots at this woman, and I apologize to you Jordan fans, but this is a warm up for Wednesday anyway, so you better strap in. But at the end of the day, I really believe women don't really know. I really believe that. I do agree with you about the mental illness thing, but I think a lot of women really don't know.
You think they don't know that they done carried another man's child?
I don't think they know who the father really is, because that's how much they throwing that monkey around.
Now, I mean, that's plausible. That is plausible, because if you done slept with 38 men in a certain time frame, it's gonna be hard to know.
Right, yeah.
But I will say, I think most women do know, because you can only get pregnant when you ovulate. And a lot of them know exactly when they are. Now, I've heard women claim they don't know when they ovulate, but as I was younger, growing up and before social media happened, women would tell me they know when they ovulate.
Yeah, but Roger, think about it this way, right? Because look at the woman in the picture, right? She was in a 3-way and raw dogging.
Mm. That's a tougher situation to deal with if that were true. Okay,
Right,
that would definitely be a tougher situation to deal
and then
with.
another. I mean, look, and you know what? I gotta tell y'all, Black Guru was there, and he told me about this, and he told me about this big NBA secret. And on top of that, right, she's sleeping with this guy on Monday. She's sleeping with another guy on Tuesday. There's probably less than 12 hours between one insertion and the other. Right? Like think about it, right? We also got to look at the STT rates, right? The STD rates of Black women are through the roof. That's a number one sign of promiscuity. It's through the roof. So I would imagine that at least a smooth 40% of women are sleeping with two dudes less than 12 hours apart frequently. Shout out to LeBron James' mom. I passed the mic.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily doubt that 12-hour two dudes with within 24 hours apart.
12 hours. 12 hours.
I'll
12
say
hours.
that's probably more normal. But within 12 hours apart, I do know that it does happen, because I know women who've done that. So I know that it does happen.
Listen, LeBron James' mom was getting nice in the locker room while this Boston was whipping LeBron's behind. I passed the mic.
Let me give it over to Black Guru, y'all. Black Guru is here. Black Guru, you have the floor, my brother.
Yeah, remind me never to follow up.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this guy sometimes.
Thanks for having me, Roger. I hope you and Three-Way and the folks in the public chat are doing well. It's funny though. I think I agree with Three-Way from a standpoint of I think in a lot of these instances, I don't know what percentage, I would argue, but I do think in a lot of these situations they don't know who the father is, because I do think that there is, and I certainly wouldn't say all black women. I wouldn't necessarily even say most black women, but I do think there's a subset, you can argue class or whatever, where there is where so much of what happens is so much of the communication or activity is by default sexual, in large part because of unemployment and essentially people not having things to do. So if men and women are around each other and they're poor and maybe somewhat emotionally distracted or whatever because of impoverished situations, they're gonna fuck. They're gonna fuck in part because of lust, obviously, but they're gonna fuck because they basically don't have any other more productive things to do. And so, as a consequence of that, you are going to have, in many instances, situations where women become impregnated and truly don't know for certain who the father is. They would know amongst a group of options of men who are potential fathers, but they don't necessarily know. And another thing, you guys mentioned ovulating. Um, you'd be surprised how little a lot of women know about their productive system, and a lot of these lessons about their menses, their ovulating, how to deal with the periods and all that sort of stuff. These are lessons that are typically passed from elder generation to younger generation. Um, but when you have these very sort of disparate family situations, 13-year-old girls, 14-year-old girls, in some instances even starting their sexual behavior, you have a breakdown of certain basic kind of lessons about things. And so a lot of times they don't necessarily know if they're ovulating. They're so distracted by things and by just again the sort of tumultuous life they're living. They're not really necessarily thinking so consciously about that sort of thing. So I do think a lot of them, as Steve would say, I do think a lot of them don't necessarily know. They know amongst a certain population of men
Yeah,
for
a
which they
ballpark
have
figure.
been in Congress with. Yeah, but they don't necessarily know very often, and they hope that it might be the man they either think they might have some who would have some greater potential would be a good father, or if there is
Hmm.
some especially special emotional tie to some particular guy, they might hope that the baby might help to solidify that. But they don't
Hmm.
necessarily know always.
Black Guru, what I'm interested in, I'm interested like 15 years from now to see what type of degenerate things were happening during COVID, because these COVID babies are going to be something else, and it's going to be very interesting to see 10 to 15 years from now what was really done in the bedroom around COVID.
I agree. I agree. I think a lot of, and when you talk about degeneracy, a lot of people were kind of chilling out and cooling out during that COVID period. So those who are really getting it in were, in some cases, some people who, are a little more reckless by nature. So who was fathering and mothering during that period or conceiving during that period? Yeah, that might be some strata of humans that might be problematic. Well, that was 5 years ago, so I guess we might want to be on the lookout eight
Yeah, the
years
next
from
five
now, I guess.
years. Yeah, the next 5 years. Yeah.
It might get wild out there. It might get wild out
Yeah.
there for
No, I
sure.
agree. I agree that COVID phenomenon is going to have an interesting long-term impact. I agree.
Yeah. Now I think there a lot of stuff will it'll probably go to like living in a rural area where just wasn't a whole lot to do. Because that's what people do when you don't have a whole lot to do. Farmers keep you busy, but if the farm ain't keeping you busy, what's gonna do it nowadays? And biologically speaking, somebody gonna suggest sex. you know, somebody gonna suggest it, whether it be male or female, it's gonna get suggested. So, I will say that I know that there can be times where women don't truly know who the father of their child is. That definitely can exist. It's a very sad thing, and a woman ought to be ashamed of herself if she don't actually know who the father of her child is, because you just shouldn't be out there like that. At the end of the day, you just shouldn't be out there like that. It doesn't make sense for you to be that wild. Now I understand we all like a little wild stuff here and there, but to be that wild where you have no idea who the children who your children belong to, there's always a taking it too far. And I just think that's the point where you've now taken it too far. Okay. Even if you want a couple guys, I mean, come on, if it's more than 2-3 guys, what you doing with your life? What are you doing? But I do think deliberately though, there's a lot of women who just don't want the father to definitely raise that first child. I do think they believe is leverage. I think they believe if the man cannot control the first child, then he cannot control the household, and they don't want to necessarily have a baby by a man who's in charge of the house like that. I don't think they want it. I think they're looking for control, and the best way they know to get control is to have a baby by a man that doesn't belong to the man she's actually with, so she can establish from Jump Street that he'll never rule the household. I think it's a very deliberate issue. Some of them are going to do it in secret, but let's keep it real. A lot of folks are doing it out in the open where they just don't want to be around the guy they had a kid by, which is why I've said before that, by the time that child's 2 years old, if you look at black folks, the man's usually out the picture. I don't run into a whole lot of black men who's still in the picture and their child had their second birthday. So by the time that second birthday comes, I think it's just in most women's plan to make sure the child is already gone. I think they don't mind the man being around while they still doing certain things or like breastfeeding and all that type of stuff. But once that's over with, I think a lot of them just be on something else. I think they cool with a man being around while they believe they need the man. But once they believe they truly don't need the man anymore, I think a lot of them just ready to cut out nowadays, which is why you don't see marriages the way it's supposed to be, because the men are looking at the women and they have this attitude toward them where, they don't believe that a father should raise a child. And if you can pick up on it, you ain't going to marry that woman. I think a lot of men are seeing that nowadays out of sisters. Would you say it? Because it ain't like
Well, I think
I was gonna say it ain't like the men not looking for marriage. Men are still looking for it. They just can't find it in this group of women that they looking for it in.
well, I do think one of what will be the interesting, I guess, consequence of the reduction of the welfare state, which I guess Trump is championing. It will be interesting to look at this over time to see because if for example, the opportunities for Section 8 housing, the opportunities for for SNAP and Medicaid, etc. The availability of those options toughen or become more restrictive, then I think that kind of decision making, Roger, changes dramatically. If suddenly you can't get those basic supplements, then doing what you just described is a pretty damn foolish thing to do. You're wrecking yourself if you do that without all that supplementary assistance. So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah,
how that affects that.
and I think these safety nets will go away. Like we're seeing we're seeing it being entertained right now, um, or in the news, and I think they will go away. They have to go away because at the end of the day, again, aging population, where people are not getting married and people are not having kids anymore, and the government don't want to take care of these women, right? I mean, so they're going to have to remove these safety nets so that women are going to get married, so that women are going to have children in the confines of a two parent household, or at least stop committing paternity fraud, right? Jesus Christ.
I see. My thing is, I'm thinking in the beginning, the first reaction would be paternity fraud would just go up. If you know there won't be certain benefits available to you, then you
Mhm.
don't necessarily want to say that this guy the baby daddy. You want to make it this guy. So you just go have sex with him a few times. Say you pregnant. Now you already know you pregnant, but a guy ain't gonna pay attention to the time like that because you can find out you pregnant within 2 weeks of
Yeah,
doing something. You
but I
know,
think I think like black men, right? We're having less and less babies, right? We're below replacement level. The nation as a whole is below replacement level. So people, even though this is still a problem, paternity fraud is a problem. Less and less people are having children because you simply just cannot trust women.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and if, like you say, if the number, because fewer than half of black men already have children, and
Right.
and I think if you probably looked at that, if you did a sort of generational application to that, I'm sure the younger men is much lower than that. I'd say amongst probably younger black men, we may even be near the 20 percentile, or at the very least in the 30 percentile of black men, younger black men who have children. So while I can see that they're attempting to do that, Roger, or I can see the mentality. But I think in the current environment, if you can't make them to impregnate you now, what's going to make them to impregnate you in a much tougher economic environment, an environment which appear to be moving towards favoring men more? I think it's going to be even more, and an environment where there probably is much more likely, you have states that are requiring DNA preceding in men being included on birth certificates. So I think that's going to be a less viable option than it might have been in years past. I see the motivation to attempt to do it, but I don't think the current, and especially the coming environment will make that a viable option.
well, I mean, my thing is, it wouldn't be the smart thing per se, but women are known for picking a choice that ain't the smart thing. Women are known for that, and I think they'll probably just be having a few more babies out there because they still gonna have sex with who they want to have sex with.
But you
You
know,
know,
you said they know. I think women are they. You say they're not known for making. I think they make smart decisions. I think they make decisions that allow them to get away with what they want to get away with. We may not necessarily agree with it or fancy it, but I think they do a lot of things that might not, from a man perspective, appear to be logical or reasonable, but it's them doing what they want to do and are allowed to get away with. And that last part is very important. What are they allowed to get away with? A lot of things that we say we accuse them of, the twerking on restaurant tables and shit, that's because ain't nobody beat their ass or sent them to jail. A lot of foul things they do are things that, yeah, ain't nobody really kind of pressed them for. So they do it. Any kind of crazy idea come to their head, it seems crazy to us, We look at it as men because we know if we do it, we gonna be up under a jail somewhere. We know if they
That's
gonna
very
do it,
true.
they get to cry about it and blame it on the nearest man and or white people, and then they get bailed out.
That's true. That's very true. We
Yeah.
do get that a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, they definitely get away with far too much. And I'm gonna say shout out to GMJ Blood. Okay. GMJ Blood says, please. I think he's reacting to the title of the show. That's what I believe he's reacting to. He said, please don't say that. Please. Children suffer greatly without their fathers. The pain never goes away, and it results in poor choices throughout their lives. Men don't know how
Very,
VIP they are.
very
Okay.
important. Very important.
Okay, now GMJ Blood, the issue is we ain't the ones saying it. The issue is the women are saying it. That's what the issue truly is. You don't see a bunch of men operating as if fathers are not important, but you do see a bunch of women acting like fathers are not important. That's what goes on in the black community. So I get you're probably reacting to the title, but how you gonna convince them that fathers are important? Because I mean, think about it. Well, you probably didn't see it, but there's a link in the chat where a woman was just literally saying, how could a man just walk away from a child that he's been raising for years just because it's not his DNA? For a woman to ask a question like that, now Angry Man gave a response, but my thing is, for a woman to even ask that question, that says neither one of those people are all that important. The whoever's supposed to be the father clearly is not important because he's not raising his child. The guy who's raising the child and just not finding out that that's not his kid obviously was not important enough to tell, so he's not that big a whoop to her. And then the child itself, whether it be boy or girl, the child's circumstances in life don't matter that much to her because she didn't even care that the child didn't know. And let's keep it real. A lot of women will die without ever releasing this information. It happens. Or like I said, it's a hospital situation where they get caught and people go through a whole process to find out this person is not a relative. They don't even come close to matching for what's supposed to be their child.
Or the 23andMe, or the 23andMe situation.
Yeah, another situation. And and I think there's a lot of I would just guesstimate real talk. There's a lot of black women that's not participating in 23andMe because so much stuff done happen with it. Now, if you're a black woman who this ain't got nothing to do with your immediate family, sure you may participate in it because you thinking everything all good. But if you done been the person who done switched the baby around and told somebody else that that this guy's your father, whether it be girl or boy, I think a lot of those women are dreading their children going to some 23andMe trying to see what's going on with their background and all that type of stuff. So I don't think you're gonna ever really hear women promote 23andMe because it ain't got too many folks
Well,
caught up.
we've seen some very prominent black celebrities have it be publicly revealed that their mamas and their grandmamas or their daddies and their granddaddies weren't who they told them they were. I think LL Cool J discovered something weird about somebody who adopted him, and then you find out, well, they were his grandparents who adopted him or something, and they adopted essentially the child from his mother, that kind of business because she was, a teen mom or some deal like that. So, it's been a number of black celebrities have had some interesting things revealed about their family background, and people looking kind of cockeyed. While what's his name, Henry Gates, is
Lewis Gates.
Lewis Gates out there doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, he's smiling, revealing it, and you look in the faces of those celebrities, and they looking all crazy.
But Lewis Gates, greatest detective the world has ever seen. Who cares about Sherlock Holmes? You know, because when he was like, because Viola Davis, I saw that episode, and you told Viola Davis, your grandfather, the person they said your grandfather, really isn't your grandfather. It's the nigga down the street. And she was like, wow. Wow. So if you're listening, Dr. Gates, the Jordan family needs your help.
Oh man, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
he,
cool.
he hate on that one. All right, but I'm gonna say this, y'all. Well, let me read these real quick. Shout out to Sweet Pea 3051. Okay, Sweet Pea 3051 says you don't need to convince women. You need to advocate for policies that are more father friendly. Take her to court, win that case. Never stop fighting for your babies, guys. They need you. Okay, I'm just gonna say interesting comment, and I'm gonna say low key says don't ask for. I ain't gonna say the word, but don't ask for stuff you don't get stuff, and you better not say stuff. Fight for your child. Now I'm gonna say this. A lot of guys, y'all go into this thing about fighting for your kid. Number one, if a woman is hiding the fact that you're not the child's father, there's no kid to fight for. You got to be realistic. Sometimes we just say stupid stuff because we want. And I'm not saying y'all don't mean well, but I'm just saying we got to look at the context of what we're saying. Sometimes we just saying stupid stuff because we want to say something that makes her feel good about that we said it. If you don't know the child ain't yours, there is no actual fight. Who are you fighting? Okay, the woman done told you the child yours. You been raising a child 10, 15 years, and then you find out the kid ain't yours. Who is you fighting? Nobody. There is no fight. Okay. Now, from the man perspective, if you don't even know that child was even born, who you fighting for? Okay. It's a lot of women not telling me and stuff. Some men will know what's going on, but a lot of men don't even know they had a kid. So who you fighting? The thing is, the only way for black men to really create some type of winning situation is not to fight for no laws. It's for you to actually have your children tested. When your babies are born, have your children tested. And as I was saying earlier, to create a more normal environment for black men to do this, I think a lot of black men should just go and take their dad and go have a DNA test. You grown and he grown. Make it a family thing. We gonna kick it off. We gonna get our DNA test. And now your 23-year-old son who just watched you get your test with his dad. See, now you go to your 23-year-old son and say, come on, son, we about to go get our test done. Now, when he does it with his dad, he 23, his dad 45 just took him to get his DNA test. What he gonna do when he get a kid? Now it's family tradition. I'm gonna get my son checked. I'm gonna get my daughter checked. That's what we do in this family.
Not at 25 though. That should be at age one day.
You know,
No.
I mean, this business where you've gone your whole life thinking some guy's your father, and then you go get a test and he's not your father. I'm questioning the cost benefit of that. I'm question. We have to talk a little more that through. We have to talk that a little more through because that's a whole different situation than you going to take a 3-month-old or whatever.
Right. Well, let me just say this because I don't want people to get the wrong idea. No, the thing is we're creating a climate for the 23-year-old to get his child tested, and it don't seem crazy. That's what the thing is. So now, as I said earlier,
but you also creating a climate potentially for turmoil.
No. I said
now,
earlier.
If you're willing to do that, because what this is what will happen when you do that. Whatever percentage of defalcation that occurs, that's going to take precedent over everything else that happens. That's going to become the focus of that endeavor. The fact that X number of whatever 23-year-old black men discovered that their daddies ain't their daddy. And then
Yeah,
that becomes more of the issue than, this whole thing you're trying to create going forward. Now, I'm not saying
yeah.
don't do it. Look, if you want to do it between you and whatever individual people, it's your decision to make. But
No,
man,
no, I'm gonna
woo.
say don't do it. Not at 23, man. If you got me for 23 years, I'm just gonna take the L, man.
All
Because
right.
there's no benefit at this point.
Let me say this, y'all. Now, I've been using the example of a guy who's 75, 45, and 23. Now, I understand that if the 45-year-old go to his dad's 75, and dad say, man, it don't matter no more. I'm 75. Cool. He just said it don't matter no more. So, he put a kibosh to that, which is his choice at the end of the day. Now, that don't mean the 45-year-old and 23-year-old shouldn't necessarily do it, because this is going to help the 23-year-old get confidence enough to get his own baby tested.
No,
So now,
Roger. You're like, okay, for example, you've raised this man for 23 years. Then this nigga finds out that you are not his dad. Do you think he's just gonna be all right? Okay, mom got me, or his world's gonna collapse?
there will be
I mean,
some
to
rough
me, it's
parts.
the heartache. The heartache would go both ways. I mean,
Yeah,
it would go from father to son. It would go from son to father. I mean,
exactly.
again, I understand it going forward. I understand it going forward. To me, it's a much safer and easier
Yeah,
thing to achieve on a go forward basis. But this, again, if people want to do it, I'm not saying don't do it. I don't know if we have the social wherewithal to survive the turmoil of what would come from that
Y'all think
if
it's going to
that
be
was
hot?
a mass, if that was done in mass. And yeah, what we're basically saying is a whole bunch of deceiving ass mamas out here. Yes, that's what we're saying. Ain't no question about it. That's what we're saying. And again, for whatever individual person who wants to do it, God bless you. I hope it turned out the way you want to do, the way you want it to turn out. But man, that's just whew.
I'm going to say shout out to Sweet Pea 3051 again. Sweet Pea say father-friendly policy is DNA requirements equals laws. And I'm going to say, no, I'm highly against that, because the American government could not be trusted to have that type of power. And that's just what it is. In theory, the ideal is great, but in execution, a lot of that may just be putting babies on niggas. And now you can't even
Well,
question because you gave
wasn't there was a recent discovery of some woman, I think maybe she was some Asian woman, who had been falsifying DNA results for years, maybe a decade. It was like thousands of DNA results that she had falsified. Do you all recall that story?
No, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I missed that
Yeah,
story. That's not
it's out there.
surprising though.
It's out there. It was quite a because there were some major criminal cases or whatever that had been decided based on evidence that she had provided, and it revealed that she had apparently been falsifying evidence for a decade or more in prominent cases. But I agree with Roger, and I'm using this to make the point. If and when you make it a state function, I agree with him. I agree with you. It's more likely uh, to bring in defalcation or government manipulation. I think you also you sanction certain lawmaking to back up whatever the government wants the results to be, essentially. So no, I agree with Roger in that regard. I would not give Roger exhibiting a great deal of foresight on this particular issue. I would not make this a state function. I agree.
Yeah, cause look, y'all, you gotta understand the state ain't never been on your side that you could even remember. You know what I'm saying? When you remember the state being on your side, now you got all these kids that need to be paid for, and we just told the state you now have permission to determine what kid belongs to what man. Why would the state not start putting babies on dudes? Because if they don't put the baby on the dude, the only thing they saying is we gonna pay for it. So you want the state to say you gonna pay for it or we gonna pay for it? You want the state with that type of power?
Well, the state already putting babies on niggas when you sign that birth certificate. Once you sign that birth certificate, it don't matter if DNA test or not.
What?
Right?
But at least that's you signing over. You know,
Yeah.
and the state ain't doing it without you. If you tell the state it now has the permission to determine that you are the father, and it's only one or two things gonna happen. Either you gonna pay for the baby or we gonna pay for the baby. That's the only choice the state got. Either you paying or we paying. What's
Uncle
gonna
Sam
be the automatic choice for the state?
Uncle Sam ain't paying shit.
Yeah, I mean, because usually in that kind of situation, they start horse trading around the criteria and certain shit get grandfathered and all that kind of stuff. In the political process, it's not going to come out as cleanly as anything that's going to be protecting men. This state hasn't done anything to protect men in over 60 years. Like, shit, going back to white men in the GI Bill. You have to go back 80 plus 90 years for anything that the state has specifically done for something that primarily affects men. And those men had to risk getting their heads and bodies torn apart in order to get that. So no, I agree. I don't foresee any scenario where any sort of reform happens to the benefit of men, especially not black men, for Christ's sake. Especially.
And believing the state gonna do it is just to me that's just y'all crazy out there. And I'm not saying it like in a bad way. I just think it's just something a lot of folks ain't thought about. If once it's in the state hands, the state now has to make a decision on are we gonna legally be responsible for paying for this child, or we gonna make this dude legally responsible for paying for this child. So we pay zero, he pay everything, or he pay nothing and we pay everything. I think that's a fairly easy choice for a state worker to make. I'm just saying.
And understand, women already take more from the state than they pay into it. So you're very, if you institute this, what you're doing is you're increasing the state, potentially increasing the state by doing it.
Yeah.
So no, they're not going to be motivated to do it in a way that benefits men.
But the state is going to take action because as of right now, right, men are getting married, men are having children, and like you said, women put more in, take more out than they put in, and people are getting older now, right? Millennials are going in their 40s now. Gen Zs are in their 30s. You know, so there's a lot of old maids up in here.
Oh, man,
well, you know what they could do, and I doubt they would do it. But what they could do is look at all the male favored professions and dramatically increase the compensation to those professions. If you dramatically increase the compensation to their professions, then you reformat the hypergamy paradigm in this country. If suddenly men are being paid 50, 60, 70% more money, the women are going to capitulate. Now, will they do that? Likely not. But if you were serious about doing it, that's what you would do. Or
something needs to be done, though. Something needs to be done because there's a lot of old women.
All right, now I'm gonna say shout out to Sneaker King. All right, Sneaker King says it's men's fault for just thinking with their membrane. Some men sleep with these 304s and surprise these kids ain't his. I'm gonna say Sneaker King, stop being silly. Let's be realistic, bro. Don't nobody sleep with a bunch of hoes and then be surprised that the hoe have a kid and the kid might be his. Men say all the time, I hope the baby ain't mine. They know it's a chance the kid might be his. And if you actually pay attention to the numbers, this is why more than half of black men ain't got no kids now. It's because they're avoiding getting the hoes pregnant. And that's why you got so many dudes who got 16, 17, 18, 19 kids. Because those are the only dudes willing to give a baby to a woman. So no, this is I get you probably come from a good place, but this is silly, man. This is silly. Be realistic. Okay.
And on top of that, because you just brought a very interesting point. On top of that, like I personally believe there's at least 30% of women who really don't know who their child is. And then you got Pookie that has like 8 and 9 kids. Then on top of that, black women have 1 million more kids than black men. So those million kids are from men of other races on top of that. So not only are you might be raising a kid that's not yours, you might be raising a white man's kids. And that's insult to injury, in my opinion.
Well, that could very well happen because some kids, like a Barack Obama looking kid, they just gonna look more regular black. You ain't gonna even know that's necessarily a person that's mixed. You know,
Halle Berry, she looks like a regular black, like a light skinned black.
Yes. So now, Sneaker King, I ain't against you. I'm just saying we got to make more sense when we say this type of stuff. Ain't too many men around sitting there thinking, "Oh, I done had a bunch of sex with all these hoes." Where if she claimed the kid mine, there's a chance. You know, he understands there's a chance it might not be his, but he does understand there's a chance it's gonna be his. He's not sitting around twiddling his thumb like it's just not gonna happen to him. Men ain't doing that. It's way too many men who done took on responsibility for these children of hoes, and they just salty that they the dude that got the hoe pregnant. That's when it does actually happen, that's what happens. It's just the guy salty, he the one came up with the kid being pregnant. But normally those guys just gonna pay the child support and move on. And that's all it is to it at the end of the day. They, you know what I'm saying, more than likely would be in the child's life and they just do what they can. You know, they just do what they can. Now they know they stuck with the mama's a hoe, but they try to make it as best for the kid as possible. That's all they can do at that point, you know. But they ain't sitting around and hiding from it or whatever. And women are having multiple kids. I mean, they're having kids who with men who got multiple kids because those are the dudes who's willing to have the babies. Because she's never gonna turn on him. She's when they ask her who the baby daddy is, she ain't gonna say it's Pookie down the block because she can't have kids if she tell on Pookie. You know, and I know some of y'all ain't figured that out yet, but that's why Pookie ain't bothered. And that's why when you talk to women, they're going to tell you they're not going to bother. They're going to say, well, I ain't trying to get blood from a turn up. She ain't going to never tell on him because if she tell on him, she can't have children. The women have figured this out already. If I tell on Pookie, who's going to give me a child?
This is what you have to be careful about if you're a halfway decent dude. Because she might have been intimidated by Pookie or recently had sex with Pookie if she is unusually aggressive with you sexually one particular evening or during one particular period of time. That's when and it's unexpected in particular or unusual. There's a strong possibility she thinks it's possible she's already been intimidated by Pookie.
Absolutely. So when you meet her and she seems like she's great fun and all she want to do is have sex, you know what I'm saying? She want to have sex at least 5 days out the week. That's deliberate. You know, she pregnant already. And now she got to convince you this baby yours. That's all it is at the end of the day. She already pregnant, you know. And I know that can mess with some guy's ego because you just thought you was the man. Y'all, I'm gonna tell y'all what I done said before. Most time women have sex, it ain't about you. Okay, it's really about them at the end of the day. You may be the guy she's doing it with, but it's a lot of times that the woman is having sex with you, and it really ain't about you. It's about what she's trying to get out the deal. You know what I'm saying? Well, so when you sleeping with some girl who's supposed to belong to your homie, and you think you're doing something. No, that wasn't ever about you. She just wanted to sleep around on somebody that was close to him. You just happened to be the dude that know him. You didn't actually mean anything. They do a lot of stuff for their own reasons, but we got too much ego or we just don't pay attention to it. So, but like I said, when it comes to this situation where a woman is even saying, look, if you find out that baby ain't yours, you still shouldn't walk away, because that's a moral dilemma. That's the way she presented it. It at least should be a moral dilemma from you. You got a 12-year-old kid and you find out this kid ain't yours. You shouldn't be so willing to walk away. Now, to me, that sounds like total nonsense, because that's your problem at the end of the day. I don't have to explain nothing to a child that ain't mine. That's how I'm gonna look at it.
Well, I think it's interesting that woman put her. God, boy, you gotta love women, man. I think it's very interesting that woman put her face to that video, because by doing that, she implicates herself, and she implicates any other mothers around her. So any women around her with children, you have, especially some women who are close to her, and you would presume either close female kin or female friends. All them Negroes need to start getting some DNA testing right now.
If her sister was my baby mama, I'm in trouble. That's how I'm thinking. I'm in trouble.
So for her to put her face to that message, I just think that's incredible.
If you married to her auntie, that's a tough situation.
I'm telling you. Yeah, everybody is implicated. Everybody, the children, the men, of course, the women, everybody is implicated.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just assuming she's talking from a perspective of already caught. That's what I'm just. Now that may not be the case. Maybe there's a friend who got caught, but that's the way she's talking to me. It sounds like she already got caught, and she's salty that the dude done packed up and left. Now, salute to the man if he did pack up and leave, if this was a real situation that she participated in. But I mean, I'm not gonna say it couldn't have been a close friend. I don't know if I would have put my face to that particular video too, because I was thinking the same thing. Black girl, she bold as she wanted to be, ain't she? She didn't even say, or maybe the video got cut off, because at least before you throw that out there, you should at least do a, let's just hypothetically speaking say.
When I first saw it, I was expecting either it to be a spoof, or something, or whatever, or something that was gonna say, "Oh, okay, yo, bullshit." But she was being very earnest and very serious, and like I say, to put her face to that message. How do you trust any woman, her or any woman around her? How?
Yeah, if I'm a dude and her best friend is my baby mama, I'm thinking I'm in trouble. Because this is who my girl kick it with. And she believed that. She really thought that was a real question that deserves a real answer,
It's interesting how social media has become, especially for Black women. I don't pay enough attention to white women that really care, but or other women. It's interesting how social media has become the world's greatest truth serum for Black women, because they end up telling everything in social media. I don't know what it is. Is it some hypnotic? Somebody needs to do some kind of study on that. Because it's amazing some of the things that they admit in that environment.
Well, I'm gonna say leave it alone. Let them talk. Sometimes,
No, I'm saying do the study. I'm not saying stop what they're doing, but I just would like to know what is going on.
Well, my thing is, can you do this? If you're gonna do the study, do it without informing them. That's all. If you got a way to do it without informing them, cool. But I want them to keep on, because when they feel like their back is against the wall, they'll just start throwing stuff out there. That's what I kind of see from them. So, I think a lot of them do feel like their back is against the wall in certain perspectives, and I think that particular woman possibly is a person who had her back against the wall. Now, I don't know if the video was cut off before she said, hypothetically speaking, or, you know, if this idea came up because I was talking with a friend. That is possible too, but they still tell it on their people. So, you know, it's still kind of a real thing.
Well,
But
yeah, whatever she says after that don't even really matter.
right. But to get to the point where people just being open with it, like, well, you know, if I fooled you for a few years, you should just accept it at that point. Like, I don't think that's the greatest advertiser for women, right? You know, I got you for 10, 12 years, so you might as well just accept it's yours. You know, that's just say something so terrible about women, you know. But I do think that you know, I mean, men just gotta kind of wisen up. And like I say, just go get your own DNA test done. I would at least ask my dad, you know, if you don't look like you fell out your father's hip, ask your dad about a DNA test. And if he's willing to do it, just do it. Because I understand what y'all saying about what calamity could come out of those situations where when older men start doing this type of stuff. But you got to look at it from a community perspective. You know, as a community, should we do this? Is it our responsibility to do it? You know, I would say, yeah, we have a certain responsibility if we really want some stuff to start changing. Because honestly, a lot of younger guys, y'all are trying to wait for it to be a state thing because you scared you scared to tell your woman, I want to get my kid tested. And you know, as black men, we're gonna have to get that fear up because we are supposed to be the leaders. How long are we gonna be afraid of women to just simply say, I want to get my kids tested? And when you first start a relationship with a woman, you can tell her that right in the beginning. Hey, look, I want you to know if we're gonna do this thing. If we ever get to the point where children come into play, I'm having all my kids tested, just so you already know. You know, it ain't no terrible thing to do that. You know, if she respects you, what kind of problem is she gonna have with that? Now think about it. If she has a bad reaction when she's new, why is she having a bad reaction? Because you said this to her. Because the only thing I can come up with, she just don't respect you. And I get it. A lot of black women ain't gonna respect you at all when you first meet them. Let's just keep it real. Some of them will grow to respect you, and some of them won't. But when you first meet a woman, she clearly shows you she don't respect you. What are you actually losing? Just check out at that moment. Because if she finna argue with me about getting my own children tested, I don't think that's the woman I should be with. Just keeping it real. That don't sound like a. Now I understand breaking it down for a woman. But let me just say this: I understand breaking it down for a woman because this would be a really new idea for women to deal with. But beyond that, I don't really think she gonna make it. She gonna be right for you anyway. Go ahead.
Well, look, you know, when people get together, you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, qualifications. You know, a lot of talk about, you know, what a man is supposed to do, what a woman is supposed to do, what a man is supposed to give, what a woman is supposed to. Well, it's usually actually more talk about what a man is supposed to do than what a man is supposed to give. So, I mean, you know, this, in my view, wouldn't be any different from that conversation. Well, obviously, going in, if there were ever to be a pregnancy that occurred or if, you know, if ever there's a pregnancy that occurred during the time in which we supposedly had been sexually involved, there will be a DNA test as soon as such can be safely performed. That's it. You know, I mean, hell, I don't know why that's not like a first date conversation. Why can't that be a first date conversation?
To
You know,
me,
why
it's a
can't that
great first
be,
thing.
you know, while we talk about what kind of job you have, or what do you expect to do in 5 years? Why would it be any different from that?
To me, it sounds like a great first date conversation. Because I'm gonna say something I've said to men plenty of times that a lot of men don't seem to get. If you out with a woman, you get to ask whatever you want to. That's just how it works. You know, I understand people have this perception of this could be too soon or whatever the case is. But if you trying to actually get to know with somebody so you could be in a relationship with them, anything you want to ask is on the table. Point blank, period. If you want to know about
In
her
fact,
last, go ahead.
as I think about it, I think the best approach would be, rather than to tell her initially that, the child would be not drug tested, DNA tested. I think the better strategy would be to ask her, what does she think about? And then get her a response, get that first initial knee-jerk response, because in that moment, she's much more likely to tell you in her response exactly what she thinks and feels about that. Because she may just say, "Oh, well, of course, that's something I would totally expect a man to do." And if that's her response, then to me, that is a sign for her to go potentially from, or me, I guess, in that potential relationship, to go from first base to second base, right? But if her response to that is antagonism right out the gate, then I don't know why you go any further with her. So the sooner you ask her that question, the better it is for you, because then you avoid wasting a lot of time, energy, and resources with this woman. She's already communicated with you the possibility of betrayal.
Yeah, so she responds to you, only weak niggas do that. You don't necessarily need a second date.
Well, why you gotta do that? What happened to you if she starts deflecting? Like, what happened to you where you have to have, if she starts, well, this, to me, this is indication of a treacherous woman. If she does anything other than to applaud you in that recommendation, or in that, or if she says anything other than, I definitely think a man should do that, I wouldn't expect them today. I wouldn't expect them to do anything other than DNA test the child as soon as it was born. Of course, that's something that he would do. I told my brother, I told my cousin that's what he can do. If her answer, frankly, is anything other than that, why are you going to be dealing with her beyond that initial date?
Yeah, and I wanted to even show this clip because I just wanted y'all to see this lady say what she said and just kind of figure out what she's really doing. The fact that she said that you basically shouldn't trip if you find out the kid is not yours, even once you've been raising that child for a significant period of time, because she threw out different numbers. So it's just, if you've been raising that child for a significant period of time, you shouldn't even trip that child don't actually belong to you. Which means what? This means that either her or a bunch of women like her have already come to the conclusion that whether a child is yours or not should not matter to you as a man. Point blank, period. You shouldn't care. You shouldn't even get a vote.
What she's also said is it's okay to be treacherous to a man. Because understand, if that's what she's communicating, basically, in my view, what she's saying is it's okay to mess over a man. Because if you can trick up a man's fatherhood that way, you'll do anything to a man. If you can betray him with respect to his reproductive genetic legacy, you could steal his money. You could get him jumped. You could have your brother sick on him. If you can do that most terrible thing to a man, then you can betray him. You could betray him to white people. You could do anything to that man if you can do that to him. So what that says to me is you are a traitor. You are seditious to men and are very much a danger to them.
And it says, I can't wait to get you. That's what it says to me. Mm-hmm. I can't wait to get you. Because if I fooled you with something that's so terrible that would mean so much to you and that you will be willing to put so much money into, then everything else should just be child's play. So if I somehow trick you to signing over your car to me, you shouldn't even worry about that. You know what I'm saying? You was willing to pay for a kid for 18 years that wasn't yours. Don't even worry about that. If I can convince you
was
to put
ready to give your whole life, potentially give your whole life, because it don't end at 18. Once you have a child, you know, I mean, my oldest child is 33, 34 years old. She's still my child as much as she was when she was 16, 17, 18. Obviously, she's grown and have responsibilities and is married and have her own life, but she's no less my child. So she's my child until hopefully, you know, she puts me in a box somewhere, you know. And I say hopefully, you know, obviously, I would rather she do that than the reverse. So, I mean, she's my child forever. So you're basically saying you want me to give up a part of myself forever for nothing. That's what you're
absolutely.
saying, forever.
Because and that's a great point. Because let's keep it real. My daddy, he called me. I'm shooting over there. If he tell me he need me to come over there, it's that simple. At the end of the day, he gonna do the same for me. And no matter how old I get, if I need my father, he gonna jump in there and do something. It just is what it is. You know, I had a financial scare not too long ago. Not a real scare, but a slight financial scare. Not a real one, but I was like, "Hey, Dad, I might need a little cash. I'm gonna see how I go over the next few days because I got some stuff that might come in. But if it don't work out, I might need a little floating cash for. Okay, that's cool. You know, I got it. You know what I'm saying? Just let me know and I bring it. That's what because that's my dad at the end of the day. So that's gonna always be available to me because he's still my dad. You know, that's just how it works. So if a woman can make it like that's nothing, you know, like that's like spilling a soda, ain't no telling what she ain't gonna do. And what I can pretty much guarantee she will do is cheat. We can pretty much guarantee that. For her to say something like that, that means, okay, it's going on with one kid, but she gonna feel that way about every other kid. So why would she be faithful to a man? Because she just wants you
If
to
you ever watched the
go ahead.
Paternity court show, one of the things that you know the cheating thing and the betrayal thing is terrible and does untold damage, especially over time. The longer things go, and it can cut both ways. It can cut the way of, you know, being said the child is not yours, or discovering the child is yours, right? Or excuse me, discovering the child is not yours after you've done everything for it. And then the other way it cuts is 30, 35, 40 years have gone by, and you've been denied the opportunity to be a father to a child who you discover is yours. So it can cut either way. But what I often find most disheartening and infuriating about that show is how so callous the women often are about that issue. And that they only, more times than not, the only time they'll ever show any emotion is when it's clear that they blind and it's been revealed to everybody. That's usually the time in which they get very emotional. But prior to it being revealed and whatever, a lot of times they're very kind of aloof from the damage that they've done to not just the men, but certainly even you could argue even more importantly, the damage they've done to the children, the lies they've told the children for 10, 15, 20 or more years. You know, so they I don't know, maybe it's a self-protective thing. Maybe it's some even sort of evolutionarily bred into women because in a more hostile environment where there are lots of men kind of coming and going, quote, so to speak, you know, in the wild, if you will, maybe it evolved in women a kind of indifference to that thing, or sort of a treachery or mercenary element to reproduction. If it's going to be 10 guys in a week, you know, because a whole lot of wild shit's going on, so to speak, you know, maybe the woman would have to evolve to be somewhat callous about that kind of thing. I'm just speculating. I'm not in sort of evolutionary science.
Well,
But I do
I'm
think there's an element of sort of callousness about that kind of thing to women. I think because of that, you have to have an environment and upbringing and religion in place to curb that. I genuinely believe that. I think otherwise women are very kind of mercenary because the child is always theirs regardless of who the daddy is. So, that's all just always an element of it.
Absolutely, but I don't think they care, y'all. I think one of the craziest things that I've hear from time to time, especially when you're talking about some black women, you'll hear them talking about Mama Bear, like Mama Bear gonna protect her children, and I'd be like, what women did y'all see? You know what I'm saying? Mama ain't said nothing up to protect her children. Ain't no dad around to protect no children. She gonna do whatever she want to do when she want to do it. So who cares whether the children are protected or not? If she can get the children to a good place, meaning the babysitter comes by, fine. But if she can't get a babysitter, so what? Like, I don't see that whole mama bear thing from from the women that I see operating with their child. I don't be seeing it. You know what I'm saying? So I understand the mama bear thing is supposed to be there, meaning she will put herself in harm's way for the protection of her child. She gonna make sure can't nobody get to her child. But I just don't really see that around black women who
Well,
seem to be mothers nowadays.
that's a lie. That's a lie by how many of black men have gone to prison the last 40 odd years. There's no way that a group of women who were especially motivated to protect their children would live in such a way in which so many of them ended up in prison. If they truly did care about the children, all of their decision making about who they made the children with, the environment they made the children with, how they raised the children, particularly how they educated the boys. They make sure that boy was reading the first moment he started uttering a word, because she would know that by the time he get to school, if he ain't reading, he gonna be put on a track in which he gonna end up in prison somewhere. So if they genuinely did, if Black Mama Bear genuinely did love her sons in particular, you would not have had so many black men go to prison the last 40 some odd years. It wouldn't have happened.
Very, very good point. Very good point. So, yeah, that whole mama bear thing is that's just crazy talk to me at this point. You don't even sound serious when you say that type of stuff. Now, I'm not gonna say you can't have an individual who shows some mama bear tactics or something similar to that, but as a group, ain't no mama bear, ain't no bear in these women at all. The cave is open. Do
Well,
what you got to do.
I mentioned the series Forever. It's on Netflix. There's some pretty good Black Mama Bear going on in that series. That's one of the things I really appreciate towards towards a black son. In fact, it's kind of one of the rare instances where you see in media where you see a black mother. Ain't no little hoe gonna mess over my son. You see that in that series. God bless the people who did that series, because you see a clear example of my son is first and foremost my priority. This woman, the character is also married, as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting bit of diversion from what you typically see in media, where it's like this false dichotomy of the girl being the victim and the boy being the villain. It's kind of flipped a little bit here, a little bit.
Well, that sounds pretty good. I hope the husband's in his proper place then, because that just makes me concerned. Is the husband in his proper place?
Well, now the husband character, everything is in order. That's the good thing too, because the mama bear is being mama bear, but mama bear submits to Papa Bear in that series. Papa Bear gets the final word in that series.
All right, what you say? Serious call. That guy has some free promotion. What you say? That series call?
Forever. It's on Netflix.
Okay, might check it out one of these days. Then might check that out. All right, shout out to them. All right, well, at least it's somewhere, which is a good thing.
I mean, no, you do have some black women, some black mothers who put their sons first and foremost, but it only really works, I think, in most cases when they're married, when they're in marriage, because you know what usually the best thing that happens is that the woman can serve as sort of like a day-to-day detail manager, and the father serves as sort of the CEO, board director, where you get to get off all of her mama bear energy, but it's in the context or the governance of a man. That's usually or very often the best kind of scenario, because very often the man has other things to do in the world. And so very often it's best to, okay, yeah, she's, the tiger mom phenomenon, where the
Mhm.
woman is making sure of things are being done right in school, and the boy is getting the proper nutrition and getting all that sort of stuff. And the father is kind of, like I say, more of a big picture figure in the home. And when the mother's getting a little bit too, you know, out of control, he kind of comes in and settles things down. Uh, that very often is sort of the best way, because you don't want the father always having to handle a lot of detailed shit. You
Yeah.
want him to be somewhat removed, somewhat above things, so that when he does speak, the shit has much more power and more influence.
Well, absolutely, because you know, you know, he's supposed to be the big gun. That's what he's supposed to be, and it's hard to be the
No
big gun
doubt.
when you're there all the time. Doing every little thing. That's for sure. You know, but I the reason I said that or made an issue of it's the fathers there, because there's a lot of women who do try to come off as they are trying to be a mama bear, but you can't be no mama bear if you ain't married. You ain't, if you didn't think your child deserved a father. The last thing I really believe about you is that you're about protecting your child. I'm just gonna keep it real on that note. I know a lot of women say that and they try to make it a issue and say, "No, I'm not like that. I'm gonna protect the mess out of my kid." How hard to believe you if daddy ain't raising this kid? It's just hard to believe. I know I can understand you may feel that way. I can believe that you think that way. I can believe that you think you on the right track, but if they father ain't right there, I mean, I don't even know how you can really formulate that. The fact that it's common don't make it right. You know, that's my thing. Because people say, well, no, everybody do it. Now, something being common does not make it right. You know, my father opened my eyes up to a concept a while ago. He said, if a man did a job for 10 years and he did it wrong, does that mean he did the job right? And I know in most people's eyes, the answer would be yes, because he'd been getting away with it for 10 years. Now, my father was like, no, it just means you was wrong for 10 years. That's all. When you go fix it? And that's what should
Well,
matter at the end of the day.
it's
Go
like
ahead.
a mentor of mine, man, professor, when I was in school, told me a long time ago. He said, and he was kind of scolding me for some shit that I didn't quite do right or was lazily doing some shit, but I did it or presented it in a way or attempted to present it in a way in which a lot had been done, but it was clear to him that, yeah, okay, you just trying to phony up some shit to cover up what your ass didn't actually do. So he tells me, he looks at me kind of wryly, because he know I'm smart and he know you're the kind of, but you can go wayward you know, because you can think you could kind of outsmart motherfuckers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's to me. It says, son, never confuse activity with accomplishment. And I mean, it's been what, uh, 40, over 40 years since he told me that shit. Going on maybe 45 years since he told me that. And it's one of those things that kind of has framed my approach to almost anything really kind of important in life, particularly related to some work or business or doing something. Uh, because a lot of times we use or we create portfolio of busy work to cover up for shit that we really need to do. And a lot of these baby mama types confuse all this running around and all this stuff with actually providing some real value to and for their children, especially for their son. You know, buying the latest clothing or gym shoes or the hairdos and all that, and you'll they'll look at that and think that it means something. It means that they're being a good mother when they would have been better off foregoing all of that shit and like buying hooked on phonics or some damn using that money to pay for some extra after school tutoring or something like that. And a lot of women do stuff that they want to do or that they most comfortable with doing and then present it as if they're doing all this stuff for the children, for the family, or whatever. No, you're doing this for yourself. You're not really accomplishing anything important with what you're doing, but it's just a lot of work. So you get to say you've done all this stuff.
Yeah, they want sweat equity credit for stuff that didn't mean a bit of a thing. And I'm a person who,
Right.
I identify that stuff because I didn't hated busy work since I was a small child. You know what I'm saying? It's the moment I figured out what busy work is, I ain't like, you know, and I'm being dead serious because there's teachers that gave us busy work, and I figured out that this was never going to actually go along with what our grades gonna be, so I ain't doing it. You know, what difference does it make if I turn in my busy work or not when we ain't getting graded on it? You know, it just don't make sense at the end of the day. So I've been doing the best I can to avoid busy work for decades at this point. You know, so I don't like hearing women talk about their busy work because to me it's just an excuse at the end of the day, and it don't make sense. And I can't calculate it in any positive way, and I can't give you any good credit if all you're doing is busy work. And that's what I think a lot of the mothers do nowadays. It's just busy work, But I'm supposed to be so dumb that I can't figure out that it's busy work, and she's betting on the fact that I'm so dumb I can't figure out it's busy work. So then it just turns into an insult to me anyway, because you really think I'm not gonna be able to figure out you was just doing busy work instead of actually doing what should be done with your child. Um, so I don't dig none of that stuff at all. I don't dig none of that stuff at all. And I do think, I've said before, if a person had to win a case in America to claim that black women are good mothers, I think he in a world of trouble. I don't care how great of a lawyer he is. I think he in a world of trouble.
I
And
don't think you can look at the last 40 years and make any strong argument that collectively they've been good mothers. Now, you can make all those arguments about, circumstances and environment. And, look, if you teased everything out, you can, to some degree empathize with certain elements of it. But then when you look at the detail about how people are living their lives and the choices they make, what you realize is they have a lot more options or have had a lot more options than they claim to have. And a lot of it is choices about personal entertainment, certainly who they lie down with, and circumstances and the reasoning for doing that. It's their own maybe educational or intellectual or educational or scholastic infirmities that they themselves refuse to address. Because I think a lot of black children are denied proper education because of scholastic inadequacies that the parents have that they refuse to address, and they're perhaps even embarrassed about. Um, so when you look at the detail, what you discover is, yeah, there are problems, there are environmental issues, racism, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of it, in addition to those things, was the choices they made and opportunities that they had that they forego, programs, to help them, help them and or their children that would have required them to take time away from shopping or getting their hair did or some shit like that, that they chose to forego.
Yeah, so when I think this is all related to, you know, women wanting to have these children by other men that they're raising them from, because I think in their mind it's just easier. If my child does not belong to the quote unquote father, it's just easier for me to control stuff. And it's easy for me to tell him off, and it's easy for me to make the man feel like he's unnecessary and unneeded. Because a lot of women operate off feelings, and they think if they can make you feel like you're not that important, then somehow that's gonna mess your mind up, and you're gonna owe her forever at the end of the day. And these children would have never been nothing if it wasn't for me. Which is a very selfish and kind of vicious mentality to have. But I think that's what they got. And I just think, like this woman was saying today, it's just about making black men comfortable with the fact that we want to raise these kids without there any real input from them. We got to make them comfortable with it.
Well, here's another thing. Here's another problem with having, and this is something that people, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody really talk about. This is one of the biggest problems with having the elder child, or in some cases, very often the elder children, not be the children of the man, the woman that's current. In most cases, the younger children will model themselves after their elder sibling. So if you have a situation where and whether it's boys or girls for different reasons, different circumstances. But let's say the elder son, the non-blood son has some resentment towards you, and you have younger children, sons and daughters, or with that woman, then there's a strong possibility that that elder child is going to do things to sabotage your relationship with their younger sibling. That happens very often in those situations. And so then you have what should be you being the primary influence in the household, with the woman playing more of a supportive role. Instead of that, you have this third figure who may at some point, and especially the older those children get, the greater that influence will be from that elder big brother or maybe big sister. So that's a problem with it, and especially if that elder child aligns with or allies with that woman in some sort of sabotage, then they can turn that whole damn household against
Yeah, that's some very sad things that will happen amongst children. And you got some folks who fight, and that stuff don't end till long after the parents dead. So you can have people wasting their whole lives not really getting to know their brothers and sisters because we arguing over nonsense that could have totally been avoided. You know, and that's a sad thing. The nonsense could have been avoided, but nobody wants to pay attention to it and deal with the fact that it could have been avoided in the first place. Because everybody got to be
it.
right.
And here's the other thing too: that outside sibling, that elder sibling, has kinship with people who are not kinship with you. So you have some other potential influences, some cousins of that elder child that might be influenced. it increase the possibility of molestation, of some harmful influence, particularly again if there's some antagonism to towards you, then the children may become victim of some sort of spite because of that. It in many situations it's just not a very smart thing to do. And then you have a situation where there's been betrayal, you know, which has been presented here. I mean, my God, it just makes no sense at all.
Well, yeah, the sad part is that, you know, based on her attitude toward it too, not only must we accept this, y'all, we better accept it pretty quick too. You know, we didn't had enough time to get over it. And she said it as if the longer you have the child, the less of a problem it should be to just get past the fact that this child don't actually belong to you, which sounds insane. Because I'm thinking the more you got the kid, the more it's gonna matter because you've been betrayed for that much longer at the end of the day, you know. But when you see the world
Yeah,
one
but she
way,
don't care. She don't care nothing at all about your betrayal, though. That's what she's saying. Well, I don't care nothing about your betrayal at all. The only thing I care about is supposedly care about is the interests of the children. I think the biggest thing they really care about is to deflect blame and condemnation of the women. Because notice in what she says, she doesn't say anything at all about the woman betraying the man. Notice that. No, he's not supposed to give any consideration or concern or anger or whatever about that. He's supposed to just suck it up, accept whatever happened, whatever number of years ago, and just focus on supposedly taking care of some other man's children.
you know, and do a good job at it too. And treat it like it's your very own, you know, which I know it can be a tougher concept because, you know, I know I've talked to some friends and you know, I introduced them to the concept of let's say you do get married one day, but you got kids by this other man. Yeah, and I understand that you think that the man is supposed to do this and be that. And they were talking about, well, you know, what if he has a business? He gonna leave the business to my son. I was like, he wouldn't leave it to your son because your son don't belong to him. That don't make a lick of sense. You know, I understand where you're coming from. You
Why
get
would
with it.
he do that? Why would they think he would do that?
I think they were just women living in a girl's world, and they think everything's supposed to be the same. You know, and my thing is everything ain't the same. And it don't make sense. I mean, women have said a lot of cockamamie stuff to me that they think is supposed to be legitimate. And I think the only reason it is because men don't tell women enough of the truth because we want to have sex with them. That's what I honestly believe a lot of this stuff comes down to.
That is
Yeah, we won't challenge them on these stupid thoughts they have because we want to have sex with them or have a potential possibility that one day at some point in time it may actually go down. So we just ain't gonna tell them the truth. Now, me, I just tell women the truth because, you know, I just think truth over everything is just more. It's just I ain't gonna say I don't never lie. I ain't no perfect person, but you know, for the most part, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. But the truth is ugly a lot of times when it comes to women with children. You know, because I was telling them, ain't nowhere in the world y'all gonna get a business off the ground and he gonna let your kid run it, because that kid don't belong to him. It don't make no sense. And it don't make no sense that if he has a lot to be inherited when he dies, that the vast majority ain't going to his own children. Now he might throw your child something because your child was there, I can see that happening, but you ain't gonna leave no $5 million of assets and give your one child a fair share because that what they said. We know, well, if it's 5 kids, they probably all get about $1 million apiece. No, why would I leave your kid a fair share of what I'm gonna leave my kids? That don't even make sense. But nobody challenges them on this way of thinking. So I think they ready to accept it, and it makes them feel more comfortable to accept that their kid would just be counted like everybody else. My thing is that's the weirdo talk, because you wouldn't expect if I put you to the test and say, y'all only got so much food to eat, would you expect somebody to split the food with you just like you family and you not? Well, no, that's because I ain't family. What makes you think your kid family? That kid don't belong to him. It's crazy. So I think women just, they want to be in denial, and unfortunately men ain't gonna tell them the truth.